My dying father pressed an old brass key into my hand and whispered, "Take care of the garden. Promise me." I was confused. Our house only had a basic lawn, no garden. But I promised. What I found out was the truth about my workaholic father who missed every moment of my childhood. He hadn't been at the office all those nights. He'd been building a secret world I was never meant to discover. Before we dive in, I'm curious, what's your favorite plant? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you love emotional and heartwarming stories, please subscribe so you don't miss our next one. Now let me take you back to the day I finally understood my father. My father was dying, and I couldn't bring myself to feel much about it. That probably makes me sound like a terrible person. But Jeremy Harper had been absent for so much of my life that his physical death felt like just the formalization of an absence I'd already spent 35 years accepting. He lay in the hospice bed, looking smaller than I remembered, which was saying something because I'd always thought of him as a small man, not physically, but in presence. He'd been the father who worked late every night, who missed every school play and soccer game, who was always at the office, even on weekends. The father whose greatest gift to me had been reliable child support checks and a roof over my head, but never his time, never his attention, never his love. "Thomas," he said, his voice weak from the heart failure that was slowly shutting down his body, "come closer." I moved to his bedside, more out of obligation than desire. My wife Anne had urged me to visit. "You'll regret it if you don't say goodbye," she'd said, "no matter how complicated your relationship was." So here I was, in a sterile room that smelled of antiseptic and death, standing next to a man who shared my DNA, but had never really been a father to me. "I need to give you something," Jeremy said, his hand trembling as he reached for the nightstand. The hospice nurse had placed his few belongings there, a watch, a wallet, and a small brass key on a simple chain. He picked up the key and pressed it into my palm, his grip surprisingly strong for someone so close to death. "Take care of the garden. Promise me you'll take care of the garden." I looked at the key, confused. "Dad, we don't have a garden, just the lawn." "Promise me." His intensity was startling. "Please, Thomas, promise me you'll take care of it." "I promise," I said, because what else do you say to a dying man? He relaxed then, sinking back into his pillows. "There's a note and my wallet. The address." "What address?" But he'd closed his eyes, exhausted from even that brief conversation. The nurse touched my arm gently. "He needs to rest now. You should come back tomorrow." I left the hospice with the brass key heavy in my pocket, feeling nothing but a vague irritation. Even dying, my father was being cryptic and difficult. Jeremy Harper died 2 days later, alone in that hospice room at 3 a.m. I wasn't there. I'd been planning to visit that afternoon, but he didn't wait. The funeral was small. My wife and daughter, a few elderly co-workers from the accounting firm where he'd worked for 40 years, and Mrs. Edson, the neighbor who'd lived next to us since I was a child. That was it. No close friends, no extended family, just the sparse attendance of a man who'd lived his life at a distance from everyone who should have mattered. As I stood by his casket, looking at his peaceful face, I felt the brass key in my pocket and remembered his strange final request. After the funeral, I went to his house, my childhood home, though I had few warm memories of it. Everything was exactly as I remembered. Clean, organized, impersonal. The living room had the same beige couch, the same generic landscape paintings. My old bedroom had been converted into a home office years ago, all traces of my childhood carefully erased. I brought with me the bag the nurse had given me with his belongings. I found his wallet. Inside, along with his driver's license and credit cards, was a small piece of paper with an address written in his careful handwriting. Greenwood Community Gardens, plot number 47. I pulled out my phone and searched for the address. It was across town in a neighborhood I rarely visited. According to the website, Greenwood Community Gardens was a cooperative where local residents could rent plots to grow vegetables and flowers. My father had a garden plot? For how long? And why had he never mentioned it? The next morning, I drove to the address, the brass key still in my pocket. The community garden was larger than I'd expected. Probably 3 acres of fenced land divided into dozens of individual plots. Some were clearly well-maintained, bursting with late summer vegetables and flowers. Others were overgrown, abandoned by renters who'd lost interest or moved away. A hand-painted sign near the entrance showed a map of the plots. I found number 47 in the back corner, separated from the others by what looked like a tall wooden fence. As I walked through the garden, past rows of tomatoes and sunflowers, I noticed a few other gardeners working their plots. An elderly Asian woman was harvesting beans. A young couple was weeding a bed of herbs. None of them looked up as I passed. Plot number 47 was surrounded by a fence at least 7 feet tall, made of weathered cedar planks that had turned silver gray with age. There was a gate in the fence, and on the gate was a brass lock that looked like it would match the key in my pocket. My hands were shaking as I inserted the key. It turned smoothly, and the gate swung open. What I saw took my breath away. Behind that fence was a world I never knew existed. The plot was large, maybe 30 by 40 feet, and every inch of it had been transformed into something extraordinary. There were flower beds arranged in careful patterns with varieties I couldn't name, blooming in purples and yellows and deep reds. A small koi pond, maybe 6 feet across, sat in one corner, complete with water lilies and a miniature fountain. Hand-carved wooden benches were placed throughout the space, positioned to catch different angles of sunlight throughout the day. But it was more than just beautiful. It was deeply personal. Wind chimes hung from a pergola covered in climbing roses. Stone pathways wound through the beds, each stone carved with a date or a word. Hope, remember, love. A small tool shed in the back corner had been painted a cheerful blue with window boxes full of herbs. This wasn't just a garden. This was a sanctuary, a work of art, a place that someone had loved and tended for years. Decades even, judging by the mature size of some of the plants. My father had built this. My distant, workaholic father, who claimed to have no hobbies and no interests outside of his job, had created this secret world of beauty and care. I walked slowly through the space, touching things gently, afraid I might break something or wake up from what felt like a dream. On one of the benches was a weathered journal, protected from the elements by a plastic cover. I picked it up and opened to the first page. The handwriting was my father's. Neat, precise, careful. August 15, 1984. I came here for the first time today. Thomas is 2 years old. Catherine has been gone for 3 months. I don't know how to live in a world where she doesn't exist. I don't know how to be a father without her. I don't know how to breathe without her. So I came here, to this empty plot of dirt, and I started digging. Maybe if I can make something grow, I can figure out how to keep growing myself. My mother. He was writing about my mother, Catherine, who had died when I was 2 years old. I had no memories of her, just a few photographs and the stories other people had told me. A brain aneurysm, sudden and devastating. One moment she was putting me down for a nap, the next moment she was gone. I'd always known, intellectually, that my father had lost his wife when I was a toddler. But we'd never talked about her, never shared grief. I'd grown up assuming he'd moved on, that he'd simply focused on work and raising me with a kind of efficient detachment. I kept reading, flipping through pages randomly, watching my father's life unfold in handwritten entries. September 3rd, 1984. Thomas started preschool today. Catherine would have wanted to walk him to his classroom, would have cried and taken 1,000 pictures. I dropped him off and went straight to work. I couldn't cry in front of him. He needs me to be strong. I came here after work and planted roses, Catherine's favorite. Every time I look at them, I'll remember her. But Thomas won't see them. Thomas won't see me falling apart. That's not what he needs. October 12, 1987. Thomas is 5. He asked me today why other kids have mommies and he doesn't. I didn't know what to say. I told him his mommy loved him very much but got sick. He asked if I get sick too. I promised him I wouldn't leave him. Then I came here and cried for an hour. I'm failing him. I know I am. But I can't let him see how broken I am. He needs a father who can function. June 8th, 1993. Thomas's 11th birthday. I missed his party because I couldn't face being around other parents, other intact families. I'm a coward. I know what I'm doing to him. I know he thinks I don't love him, but I love him so much it terrifies me. What if something happens to him? What if I lose him too? It's easier to stay at a distance, to keep working, to come here and maintain this garden where everything I plant stays where I put it and grows according to predictable patterns. I hate myself, but I don't know how to change. I sat on the bench and kept reading, tears streaming down my face. Page after page of my father's hidden grief, his paralyzing fear, his desperate attempts to hold himself together for my sake. He hadn't been indifferent. He'd been drowning, and he thought the kindest thing he could do for me was to drown quietly, out of sight. All those nights, he'd claimed to be working late at the office. He'd been here, in this garden, talking to my dead mother through the roses he'd planted for her, processing a grief so overwhelming that he couldn't bear to let me see it. I heard footsteps on the path outside the fence. An elderly woman appeared at the open gate, peering in curiously. She was Asian, probably in her 70s, wearing gardening gloves and carrying a basket of vegetables. "Oh," she said, startled. "I'm sorry. I didn't know Jeremy had someone here. I'm Mrs. Liu. I have the plot next door." "I'm Thomas," I said, wiping my eyes quickly. "Jeremy's son. He passed away." Mrs. Liu's face crumpled. "Oh no! Oh, I am so sorry. We all loved Jeremy. He was the heart of this garden." You knew my father?"
Of course. Jeremy has been here longer than anyone. He helped me set up my plot when I joined 15 years ago. He taught my grandson how to grow tomatoes. Last year, when I had surgery and couldn't work my garden, Jeremy maintained it for me. He was the kindest man. I stared at her. "My father? Jeremy Harper?" "Yes. He was here nearly every day. He volunteered with the youth program. We get teenagers sent here for community service sometimes, troubled kids who need guidance. Jeremy was so patient with them, teaching them about plants, about taking care of living things. He donated produce to the food bank every week. He helped several of the elderly gardeners here when their plots got too difficult to manage alone." She smiled through her tears. "He talked about you constantly, you know. He was so proud of you. He never... I couldn't find words. He said he regretted that you two weren't close," Mrs. Liu continued gently. "He said he'd failed you as a father, that he'd hidden too much of himself. He said he didn't know how to fix it, but he hoped that someday you'd understand why." Another gardener approached, a man probably in his 60s with kind eyes. "Is it true about Jeremy?" I nodded, unable to speak. More gardeners started appearing, drawn by the news. Each of them had stories about my father, how he'd helped them, taught them, been present and kind and generous with his time. Time he'd never given to me. Except that wasn't quite true, was it? He'd worked full-time to support us. He'd kept the house clean, made sure I had everything I needed materially. He'd just been absent emotionally. After the gardeners left, offering condolences and asking me to let them know about any memorial service, I continued exploring the garden alone. In the tool shed, I found supplies organized with the same precision my father had brought to everything. Tools hung on pegboards, seeds sorted in labeled boxes, fertilizers and pesticides stored safely on high shelves. And in the back corner, in a waterproof plastic container, I found a box. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, all addressed to me in my father's handwriting, all sealed but never sent. With shaking hands, I opened the first one. It was dated on my 8th birthday. Dear Thomas, you're 8 years old today. I came here to your mother's garden and planted 8 sunflowers, one for each year of your beautiful life. You got a bicycle today. I saw you riding it when I came home. You looked so happy, so free. I wish I could have been the one to teach you how to ride it, but our neighbor, Mr. Edson, did that while I was here, hiding. I'm so sorry, Thomas. I love you more than I know how to say out loud. Every day I think about being a better father to you. Every day I fail. Happy birthday, my son. Dad. I opened another letter, this one from my high school graduation. Dear Thomas, I watched you walk across that stage today and accept your diploma, and I was so proud I thought my chest might burst. You did it. You made it through high school despite having a father who was barely present. You made it through with good grades and good friends and a bright future ahead of you. I wanted to take you to dinner to celebrate, but I couldn't. I couldn't sit across from you and see in your eyes how much you resent me, how much you've learned to expect nothing from me. It hurts too much. So I came here instead. I planted a tree for you, an oak tree that will grow strong and tall, just like you have. I'm sorry I've been such a disappointment to you. I'm sorry, but I think protecting you from my pain is more important than letting you see me as a real person. You're going to do great things, Thomas. You already are. I love you. I'm sorry I never learned how to show it. Dad.
There were letters for every birthday, every milestone, every moment he'd missed. Letters explaining why he wasn't there, apologizing, expressing love he couldn't say to my face. To be fair, I'd been raised well. I'd never gone hungry, never lacked for anything material. But that was largely thanks to my grandmother, Norma, my father's mother, who'd moved in with us after my mother died. She was the one who'd made my lunches, attended my school plays, and sat with me when I had nightmares. Grandma Norma had died when I was 17, right before I left for college. I remember her final words to me about my father. He loves you more than you know, Tommy. He just doesn't know how to show it. Be patient with him. I hadn't been patient. I'd been angry that even my grandmother's death hadn't brought my father out of his shell, hadn't made him suddenly present and emotional. The funeral had been the same as everything else. My father quiet, distant, going through the motions, while I grieved the loss of the only parent who'd actually felt like a parent. I sat in that garden until it got dark, reading letter after letter, understanding for the first time that my father's absence hadn't been indifference. It had been broken grief he didn't know how to share. Fear of being vulnerable, and a deeply mistaken belief that being strong meant suffering alone. He'd loved me. He'd loved me so much that he'd hidden his pain for 33 years so I wouldn't have to carry it with me. It was wrong. It had damaged me. It had damaged both of us. But it had come from love. Over the following weeks, I returned to the garden every day. I read every letter. I read every journal entry. I learned about my mother through my father's words, her laugh, her kindness, her dreams for me. I learned about my father's grief, his regrets, his desperate attempts to be the father he thought I needed rather than the father he actually was. And slowly, surrounded by the beauty he'd created in his hidden sanctuary, I began to understand and, eventually, to forgive. I started maintaining the garden, learning as I went. Mrs. Liu showed me which plants needed water, which needed deadheading, which were starting to go dormant for winter. The other gardeners welcomed me, shared stories about my father, helped me understand the community he'd been part of all those years. One Saturday afternoon, I brought my daughter Leela, my father's granddaughter, who'd only met him a handful of times before he died. "Grandpa made this?" she asked, looking around in wonder. She was 6 years old, full of energy and questions. "He did. He worked on it for a very long time." "Why didn't he show us?" It was the same question I'd been asking myself. "Because he was sad, honey. And sometimes when adults are sad, they don't know how to share it. They think they have to be strong and hide their sadness. But that's not always the right choice." "Were you sad when Grandpa died?" I thought about that. I am now. I wasn't at first, because I didn't really know him. But now that I'm learning about him, about all the things he felt but couldn't say, I'm sad that we missed so much time together. Leela picked a flower, one of the late-blooming roses my father had planted for my mother. "Can we come here a lot? I like it here." "Yes, sweetheart. We can come here as much as you want." Over the winter, I researched gardening. I read books, watched videos, joined online forums. The garden gave me something to do with my hands while I processed my complicated grief about my father. Not just grief about his death, but grief about the relationship we never had, the conversations we never shared, the love that existed but was never properly expressed. In early spring, I decided to add my own section to the garden. I cleared a small area near the entrance and planted vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, herbs, practical things, growing things, things Lila and I could harvest together. And I put up a small stone marker with an inscription: Jeremy Harper's Garden, 1984 to 2024. He built this place with love and tended it with care. On the back of the stone, I added my own message, one I'd never gotten to say to his face. "Dad, I understand now. I wish you'd let me see you broken. I wish you'd known it was okay to not be strong all the time. I wish we'd had more time together, that you'd taught me about this garden while you were alive, instead of making me discover it after you were gone. But I understand why you hid. You were trying to protect me, even if your protection hurt in different ways than you intended. You loved me. I know that now. And I forgive you for all the ways you showed that love imperfectly. Thank you for giving me this place. Thank you for showing me that love sometimes hides in unexpected places, in gardens we build in secret, in letters we write but never send. I'll take care of your garden, Dad. I promise. Your son, Thomas." 2 years later, the garden is thriving. Lila and I come here twice a week. She's learned the names of all the flowers, understands the cycle of seasons, knows how to water and weed and harvest. She asks questions about the grandfather she barely knew, and I answer as honestly as I can, about his struggles, his mistakes, and his hidden love. I've started a tradition of writing letters too, though mine I actually send. I write to Lila, letters she can read when she's older, about my feelings, my mistakes, my love for her. I'm determined not to repeat my father's error of hiding my emotions in service of some misguided idea of strength. But I also understand my father better than I ever did when he was alive. I understand the weight of grief, the fear of vulnerability, the terrible ways we can hurt people we love while trying to protect them. The garden has become a meeting place for our family. Anne and I bring Lila here for picnics. We've invited friends to visit, sharing the beautiful space my father created. And sometimes, when I'm here alone in the early morning or late evening, when the light is soft and the garden is quiet, I talk to my father the way he talked to my mother all those years. I tell him about Lila's latest achievements, about my work, about the ordinary moments of life he missed. I tell him I wish things had been different, but I'm grateful for what he gave me, this sanctuary, these lessons about grief and love, and the importance of letting people see you as you really are. The garden is my inheritance, not money or property, but something far more valuable. It's a bridge to understanding, a space for healing, a living reminder that people are more complicated than we give them credit for, and that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. My father spent 40 years building this garden in secret, hiding his grief from me because he thought that was what strength looked like. He was wrong about that, but he was right about one thing. Gardens, like relationships, require patience, care, and faith that what we plant today will bloom tomorrow. I'm taking care of his garden. I'm teaching my daughter about growth and seasons and the importance of tending to what matters. And I'm trying every day to be the kind of father my dad wanted to be, but didn't know how. Present, honest, and unafraid to let the people I love see all of me, even the broken parts.
Because that's what he taught me in the end, through his absence and his secret garden and his hundreds of unsent letters. Love hidden is still love, but love shared is so much stronger. What did you think of Thomas's journey to understand his father's hidden grief? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about complicated fathers, hidden love, and the gardens we tend in secret touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more meaningful stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our next thought-provoking tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.